This is Lessons in the Challenges of Leadership, the series that enables managers to achieve the remarkable. Podcast, video, short reads, brought to you by Being Learning. Conceived, developed and presented by Siebert Neathling.
Change is hard, right? Not so sure. It depends on the kind of change. A while ago, I bought a new car, and on my way to the dealership, I drove my old car for the last time. And even though it was time for a change, I felt this surge of nostalgia. The old car and I had done great things together, countless commutes, many long early morning journeys to other cities to work on contracts, some wonderful family road trips, and one narrow escape where its great road holding and braking ability were life-saving. So I stroked the steering wheel one last time, closed the door and looked back at it as I walked towards the salesman. And then I got into the new car. And all of this was completely forgotten within minutes. The acceleration was so much better. It was quieter, felt more sturdy on the road, and the sound system was next level. Now that was change. And despite my fickle nostalgia, it was very easy change. Change is not always hard. A long-wanted promotion, an unpleasant colleague leaving the organization, a new coffee machine. These are changes we relish or at least take in our stride. But some changes are difficult. A new and unpleasant boss, new software that is difficult to learn, new systems that are counterintuitive to you, a change in company policy that you do not support, the election of a new leader you did not vote for. No matter who you are, there are changes that delight and changes you find hard. Now, I like representing this as a diagonal line on a page, bottom left being difficult change, top right being easy change. If we agree with a change, or if it benefits us, we tend to be positive about it. If we disagree with a change, or it affects us negatively, we tend to be negative about it. Now, there is an additional factor. You might have heard the term burning platform. It is worth looking at where this comes from. Imagine you are on an oil rig in the freezing North Sea. You would never jump off it. If you don't die on impact hitting the water, you will die in minutes from hypothermia. But if that oil rig catches fire and you are in imminent danger of burning to death, you would jump. Now, I've always found this analogy quite extreme, certain death versus likely death. But it is a vivid image of a pressing need to change. How this relates to change is that people can commit to change, even change that is hard, if they see a compelling reason to change. But if people do not understand why change is necessary, there is no burning platform. They will be negative about the change, especially if it is unpleasant. Now, we often hear about change resistance, and this is used as such a blunt instrument, labeling people who do not wholeheartedly support a change. The challenge of leadership is building that compelling case for change. It is difficult to do because, as we know, human beings are not primarily rational beings. We like to think we are, and we often accuse others of not being rational, but behavior science and our own best insights tell us that rational arguments are easily overridden by emotion and biology, that extra serving of dessert, that impulse purchase, that emotional overreaction. We are all capable of irrational behavior. So building the case for change is not only about presenting logical arguments. Later in the series, we have an episode on complex communication where we show in more detail the process of persuasion. Now, there is an added complication. We represented attitude to change as a straight diagonal line, but in reality, behavior science tells us it is not a straight line. If you are told about a change that you support, one that you believe in and that you've been waiting for, you are likely to experience a sugar hit of positivity disproportionate to the magnitude of the change. This could blur your sense of reality and cause you to gloss over some of the imperfections and challenges of the change. I have seen people hugely excited when they upgrade their homes, highlighting all the positives of the new accommodation and its special features, but talk to them a few months later and they complain about the annoying features they overlooked or minimized when change first became a reality. The opposite is true of negative change. Humans typically don't respond well to bad news. They overreact, magnify the negatives, and foresee certain doom associated with the change. I remember a senior equity partner in a consulting firm behaving like a child when the company decided to change its logo and branding. Of course, in that case, it was the tip of the iceberg, representing all that was really wrong. His deep resentment about losing out to his colleagues in key decisions, the fact that he was feeling marginalized, and his own frustrations about the trajectory of his career. The psychology was clear enough. But of course, he could not see that, and the change became the final straw. So our straight line should really be more of an S-curve, soaring high when change is positive and diving low when change is negative. Overly positive responses tend to mediate over time as the change becomes the new normal. And overly negative responses often become more balanced as familiarity sets in and people realize that change has some benefits or has not had the dire consequences anticipated. I so often hear from people months after change that they had been wrong or that their initial skepticism had been misplaced. But of course, that is not always the case. And in the next episode, we will talk about responding to persistent change resistance. But for now, let's complete our diagram of the viability in change responses. When people feel negative about a change, or if it is very difficult change for them, they are likely to experience anxiety about it. 20 years ago, I moved my young family to another country. And even though it was a willing change, and I am an absolute change champion, even I had nightmares and experienced great nervousness about the change. I think that was normal. Now, worse than anxiety is anger. If people are heavily invested in solutions being replaced by a change, you are likely to encounter real resentment. I remember supporting the introduction of a new performance system in a government entity and seeing very angry responses. It turns out that some people had put a lot of energy into the system being replaced, and that they had done so against the wishes of some of their colleagues, so had made some enemies in the process. And now all that effort and emotional cost turns out to have been futile. They were angry, and I understand why. Active resistance to change is one thing, but you're also likely to experience passive resistance. Well, if that's what I have to do now, I'll do it, but it's not going to work. Now that leads to people going through the motions but not committing, and the change not having the effect it was intended to. Some people pretend to follow the change, but create workarounds to avoid it. A large, well-known organization I can't name established a new software case management system. Many employees continue to use the old system, though, but created reports in the new system's format so it looked like they had used the newly mandated system. There was even a secret WhatsApp group to explain how to do the workarounds. Now, the effort that went into the change resistance was considerable, much greater than the effort would have been to learn the new system and refine it to meet their needs exactly. When the workarounds were discovered, the organization even set up a workaround task group to overcome the problem. So let's face it, some change is unpalatable, and sometimes change is just plain wrong. So leaders should never take change lightly. Make sure your case for change is solid. Spend effort on communicating the change well. And you should never underestimate what it takes to get buy-in, supporting those who are justifiably anxious about the change, overcoming resistance in its various forms, and making sure that the change sticks. There is so much more to learn about this. Be sure to join us for the next 2 episodes.